So do you want, let me go ahead and introduce you and then you can elaborate on,
Sure.
okay. All right. So I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Jeff Jones. He's been working with families affected by addictions for the last 20 years. Today, he'll be speaking about his newest awesome project called Family Addiction Engagement Training, a 6-week online program for families with a loved one using drugs or alcohol, or going back and forth between abstinence and problematic use, or someone who's had months or years of abstinence, but problems in the family have not gone away. So he'll be discussing who would be candidates for his program. So Jeff has been trained in Colorado as a licensed professional counselor, a certified addiction counselor, an interventionist, and is a nutritional coach with the Academy for Addiction and Mental Health Nutrition. Currently, he provides coaching packages online for families and individuals affected by addiction. Last year, he co-founded Addiction Recovery Engagement Training, ARIT, with Mark Stiles. This year, he's developed his newest training program, reflecting his 20 years of working in family addiction counseling, called the Family Addiction Engagement Training. This model combines family education with incremental offers to engage a loved one in the healing journey. Throughout the 6-week training, the family is given many tools and ideas to create conditions that are inhospitable to active addiction. So today's talk will be an overview of this program.
Wow. Well, thank you very much, Falsa. That was awesome introduction.
You're
Okay.
awesome. So I'm looking forward to it. Yes.
Yeah. So I will share my screen here. And maybe I can make this bigger. See here. Okay. Okay, so here we go. Yeah, awesome job introducing, so I won't be redundant. But what I do want to say is a little bit more about me and why listen to me in the first place. And a lot of the reason why, the family angle has been so of interest to me in my own life. I mean, I've worked with plenty of individuals in treatment centers, my own private practice, and all that kind of stuff. But I have I have my own childhood story, which I'm not going to get into all of it, but I'll hit on some high points that really keep me focused on the family angle. There's a problem here, and we need to do something about it. And what is available currently, in my opinion, my judgment, is not enough. So I grew up in like my mom and dad and my sister, small family of origin kind of thing, no active addiction, none. Um, if food stuff was seen as active addiction back in the 60s, probably so. But essentially, when my mom and dad took my sister and I to visit my mother's father, my grandfather, um, it's like the roles in the family changed hugely. And I really felt it in a big way. And my role got elevated and my mom's role got pushed down. And so my grandfather was the one who showered more love and attention upon me than anybody in my life. And I think every child should really have the opportunity and blessing for a parent or grandparent or caretaker to shower love upon them and for them to feel special, because I sure felt special by my grandfather. The other side of this is my mom's role got pushed down. And like as a child, 7, 8, 9 years old, I didn't really understand what was going on. I mean, like my mom was, she was on the side in the corner. My dad was behind her, had his hands on his shoulders. My mom's shoulders were kind of, slumped. And, it was like my dad was nurturing her, and my dad never needed to nurture her. My mom was a strong, competent person. So I noticed this, kind of, this is so different kind of thing. And my sister and three female cousins tried to let me know that this showering of attention upon me was not about me. I so wanted it to be about me, and I believed it was about me, but my sister and cousins let me know it was about my gender. So and then this thing that was happening with my mom, it was just so confusing, and I had these concerns about love and hate and how do I do this, et cetera, et cetera. And in my own family of origin, my mom ran the family. And we oriented around her when she had a problem, which was she was being re-traumatized because, like, when she was mousy and off to the side at my grandfather's house, that was because she had been traumatized. And I never knew that. And my mom never spoke about it. My mom never went to a therapist. No healing happened there. So in my family of origin, the structure that I grew up in was just like the structure of an addicted family, because my mom created it. And my mom, when she got triggered, everybody in the family knew what to do. So that's the short version. And I'll, just kind of move on from there. And as a teenager, I was curious about my grandfather, and I would ask my mom a lot of questions, and every question, would have the answer, Jeff, the only thing you really need to know about your grandfather is he's an alcoholic. And that was pretty unfulfilling for me. And actually, it probably encouraged me to go out and do my own drug and alcohol thing. Um, but I've never been to a treatment center. I'm not an AA person. Um, but I have been super curious about addiction. And, becoming a therapist, it was like, okay, what do I want to focus on? I don't want to be a generalist. So I focused on families, and I focused on addiction. And I did a lot of things in treatment centers, groups, um, education, therapy groups for people who got caught drinking after driving, kind of thing. Um, and so through these experiences, I had these questions you see at the bottom here, mainly from treatment centers. How do people really get better here? And when I started training with Christina Vasilok, a lot got answered there. So I'm not really going to get into that today. But then I kept asking myself, how do families contribute? Well, and when I ask myself that, it's like I'm not just saying how do they contribute to the problem. We all know how families contribute to the problem. We hear anyhow this shaming language. They enable their codependence. That's how they contribute to the problem. But that wasn't my interest. My interest was mainly how do they contribute to the solution? Because the family's on the front lines. They see this stuff over and over for months, years, decades, whatever it is. And, so I just, and families are the ones that eventually get their loved ones into treatment, not all the time, but a lot of the time. And then when they get into treatment, they're told that they're a part of the problem, or some version of that. So this family addiction training, these are 4 elements, kind of a quick little overview, and it's family education early, before their loved one has stopped, using drugs and alcohol, essentially, and then incremental family change. And families just going through this program, they like, there's a lot of, I invite people to do homework after every session. And so there's a lot of things that they will be changing if they do the homework, and then incremental offers to the individual in addiction. And, the first one is planting seeds with family change and then living beyond addiction. And so, what I'm going to do here is just kind of go through these 6 sessions, and, I can do it pretty quick. Um, Feel free to, if you have a question, ask the question at the end of the 6 sessions. I'm going to stop and see if there's any questions. And what I can do is then go to the slides of the first session, because I'm talking about, um, you know, for centuries, there's been these mixed messages about addiction in our culture, and they make the problem worse. And it gets really, really confusing. And so, one of those confusing messages I frame as, from black and white thinking, it's like, should I do pharmaceuticals or should I do nutraceuticals, amino acids and supplements and all of that kind of stuff? So both and thinking is a really important aspect that I want families to become aware of. But anyhow, after we go through the 6 sessions, I can show slides and kind of show how I'm trying to bring in that message for people. But anyhow, the first session starts like way, way back, and it starts with, back in the Egyptians, and the Egyptians thought flogging was a solution, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, that was rational thinking of the time period. And that's why I bring that up, is rational thinking. And rational thinking today is what I just mentioned with this, like, is it black and white thinking or is it both and thinking? So anyhow, I don't have to read all of this stuff. What this SSRT is, the shame and stigma reduction timeline. And it's essentially it's a visual that shows, it's the work of Lloyd DeMoss, who his life's work was traveling into many cultures with 3 research questions. What is the parenting like in this culture? What kind of adults are created from this parenting? And what kind of culture do these adults create? And essentially, he has 6 levels, but that's one thing that may not be so clear. And I don't have to read all of this. Um, so the second session here is framed. So from these mixed messages in the culture, then there's trickle down into the family, and these mixed messages land on the family. And and I do not see where the culture is taking responsibility for these mixed messages, but I do see where the family feels responsible, and they shame themselves, or they get shamed from other people, or a combination. And then the stories we tell ourselves, that's the belief system cycle, the BSC. It's kind of like old beliefs from the past. And out of that comes our thinking. Out of our thinking comes our actions or behavior, or our lack of actions. And then we have feelings about that behavior. We have feelings about that situation. And a lot of times those feelings reinforce old beliefs, and we get caught in this, what I call the belief system cycle. And then I talk about family roles and the drama triangle, which is at the center, the nervous system. And I get into this quite a bit, and then end with needs, and the basic needs of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and then also inviting people to create their own emotional needs list. And because when they create their own emotional needs list, this is the first step to them setting boundaries, because the emotional needs list is, and how they see it and relate to it is like an internal boundary. Okay. And then session 3 is these mixed messages in the family are confusing, and the family takes responsibility, and it's super hard for them to figure out what's going on, and it's so difficult for them to reach out for help. So, this first session, or this session 3 here, is about, can we clarify mixed messages? And it's like, essentially, my message is no. Let's not put energy into trying to do that, because we can get lost, and there isn't going to be one black and white answer to very much of this. But what's most important here is you taking care of you. And then this stress from addiction, et cetera, et cetera. These are slides from Christina Vasilak's level 2 training, when she's talking about the endocrine system and the adrenals. She also has some slides for family members who have a loved one who's either in addiction or early recovery. So this session, it's kind of like inviting people to try some of those solutions. And then I talk about internal, external boundaries and the idea of planting seeds for change. Um, and then the fourth session, part of this trickle down and modeling from the culture is power. How do we use power? How is power, how does it operate in our family? And when I was doing face-to-face intervention a good number of years ago, one of the things I was always aware of in talking to the family is whose voice gets listened to. Like when someone's talking and everyone else is looking at them, and then whose voice doesn't get listened to. And that, in my mind, I could just kind of file that away. It's like, there's a power thing going on here. There's also the question about, team or no team. This is super important because, and I could say more about this if there's questions, but I'll try to keep it very concise. Generally, there's one person in the family that reaches out for help, and all the information goes through that one person, and there's reason for that, and a lot of times everyone else is burned out, and they are no longer interested, or they have distanced themselves from the person or the problem or the family or whatever. But for me, I really, in every one of these sessions, I'm always kind of like planting little seeds about, do you want to do this by yourself? If you do this by yourself, and I quote one of my first addiction mentors, Dr. Judith Landau, who has an intervention model that she teaches all around the world. One of the things that she would say over and over again is one-on-one addiction always wins. So I want people to know that if they think they're going to do this by themselves, it is going to be a whole lot harder. Success will be, probably a lot less successful, and it may take a whole lot more time. And so I'm encouraging people to have a team, and a team being that one person that's listening to these slides or whatever. They can be sharing information with other people. And then at some point we can get together, talk about, like, get everybody on the same page with one, what addiction is and what we're like, the steps we're going to go through. And then we can have a unified family recovery message as opposed to just one person. And I also talk about some of the obvious, just mention domestic violence and creating a safety plan and, threats the loved one may kind of say to someone or put on someone. And it's also temptations like, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to start going to meetings, or I'm going to continue to go to meetings, or instead of one meeting a week, I'll go to two, or instead of one meeting a day, I'll go to two, but it's like these things that are like music to the ears of family members, and it can be a temptation. The question I always ask is, when they've done those temptations, when they've put that out there, how often are they really able to do that? How often is their behavior aligning with their words? So power, and this is kind of this is a very huge topic. And the next thing that I talk about here that's in the culture that also trickles down is language and communication. And what does communication look like in the family? And the family can create their own communication guidelines. A lot of times, families just want to, that person has the problem. I don't want to do all this work, just fix them, just get them to go to treatment. And this model is not like this. This model is more like the family really understanding what's going on and them starting to change their communication here. And then I talk about the 3 pathways to intervene, and actually the unified family recovery message is a 4th pathway, and then steps to healing. And, there's like parallel paths from individual healing and family healing. And there can be times when the individuals and the families come together and have communication together. So that's part of what I do, with a family recovery agreement, facilitated sessions with the individual and the family member. This is a meaty session because this is where the rubber hits the road pretty much with, these pathways to intervene. And it's essentially the 3 are, the one that I mentioned is the planting of seeds, which there's hundreds, if not thousands of different ways to do that. And I can't just tell people, oh, just do this, or I can, but really what's important is for them to really look at the context. What's going on? What's the situation? And then they can design kind of seeds to plant that are going to be the most appropriate for their loved one and the relationship between them and their loved one, kind of thing, or you and your loved one, whatever. And then be able to plant seeds that are that are most impactful, because this isn't just technique. But anyhow, the first pathway is planting seeds. The second one is like, I realize, that you have a choice. You can continue drinking. But I also realize that I have a choice. I can have addiction in my life or not. And I've been thinking about that, and I've made some decisions and kind of thing. So that's kind of the second pathway. And then the third pathway is where the family has a plan laid out, like where the person's going to detox, treatment, is it going to be standard treatment? Is the biochemical repair going to be a part of it? Is it a situation where the biochemical repair and intensive coaching, which could be, you know, um, a couple hour and a half meetings a week and 5-minute check-ins every morning, like is that appropriate? So anyhow, that's session 5. And then session 6 is I say a little bit more about these 3 pathways and kind of customizing them, and talk about healing. And a lot of that one person in the family who's the very first to reach out, they are the ones that really need the to start the healing first themselves. And when they do it, they can be planting seeds for other people in the family um, to follow. And a lot of this comes down to the mom. It's not always the mom, but a lot of times the mom is the person in the family who there's a problem in the family and the mom fixes it. And she has a lot of success. She has a track record of fixing this and this and this, and other people in the family can look at her and go, oh my gosh, she'll take care of it. She's always taking care of it, kind of thing. But the problem is that whatever strategy the mom or whoever's in that role has used to fix problems in the family, that same strategy doesn't work with addiction. And so, the person in that role needs a lot of the healing. Anyhow, that's the 6 sessions. And I will stop this share, and I can answer any questions, and then I can go and, kind of show you the slides from this first session and focus on the challenge of, the pharmaceuticals and biochemical repair, how I frame that. And I'm open to anybody's feedback. I'm very open to, you know, um, critical feedback that can help me improve this program. I don't want to be a punching bag, but I am very open to feedback. So if there's questions, I can take them now from what I presented. If not, I can jump into this other thing. You're muted, Volsa.
Yeah, sorry. I was saying thank you for the first part of the presentation. So is this for the whole family, or is it usually the individual that reaches out and sort of says, I'll be the representative for the family? And then so it sounds like it's the mom that comes first, and then maybe the family. So then is it like this training for 6 weeks, and then after that, there are these private sessions with families that happen
Yeah,
after that?
this is a wonderful question. And the training that I did it in 6 weeks. And what I am realizing is well, now I have recorded myself talking about all of these slides, and I'm working with someone who can, put all this information online, all the resources, the videos, the PDFs, the homework, and all that kind of stuff. And I am seeing this more as kind of like a 3-month kind of sign up for this for 3 months, do the education as you would um, like whenever it works for you, because it's online. And then what I can do is just have coaching groups, like weekly coaching groups. And Elena here, she has been doing the Sharing Hearts group for since June. And so I made the Sharing Hearts group a part of the 6-week training. But the Sharing Hearts group, I think, could easily be a part of an ongoing thing. And, people sign up for this and they start learning about this. And yes, it would be that one person first. My hope in planting all these seeds and talking about team or no team is that it is expanded out to other people in the family. And with this being online and like people being able to access it, that one person that, we'll use as example, the mom, um, she can send like a particular video or the whole video and say, hey, there's this really important part that I want you to look at from 20 minutes to 25 minutes,
Mhm.
so the mom can be planting seeds with other people in the family. The other possibility here is that instead of coaching groups and I offered this at this last training, and I think I want to offer it in the future, but that is in addition to group coaching kinds of things, that there's individual sessions. And the individual session, well, it could be with one person, but ideally it would be with, the whole family. And I've done this before with too many people, like 18 people in a family. Um, but it's like that is my hope that one person starts it, they start planting seeds with other people in the family, and then I can talk to the group and help them kind of with the unified family recovery message, et cetera, et cetera. Am I answering your question, Balsa?
No, it's great. Yeah. And how long is each session that you recorded, like each of the weekly sessions?
Yeah, so they're probably anywhere from 50 minutes to an hour and 20 minutes. And at some point, I may be able to break that down into 15-minute chunks, you know, session one, here's the first 15 minutes, the second 15. I mean, I'm still navigating that whole
Right.
techie kind of world, and I'm not a techie person, but
And also,
I'm
like, how
working
long
with
can people pay
it.
attention? How long?
Yeah,
15
yeah,
minutes. Yeah, no, it's actually great that, you're focusing on families who need help just as much as the affected individual. So that's a component that's often missing, right? Like we try to focus on the
oh my
individual
gosh, yeah,
and then not really focusing on the family, even though we all try to bring the family in, but
right.
sometimes the family needs to bring the individual in. Like that's your focus, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's like right now, what's available for families is there's Al Anon, there's tough love, or there's intervention, and those, and so what I'm doing here is different than that. And I'm trying to remove all the shaming language and acknowledging this stuff in this trickle down. It's not your fault. Like we have this language, hey, you're the addict, you need to get your act together here. And it's like, I don't call people addicts. And I know that's helpful for some people, and that's great. But it's not helpful for me to label someone like that. The same with just saying, oh, you're a family member of someone who's, still using, well, you enable. And I'm going, wait a minute, like that's not the definition of the word. We say enable in the context of addiction, and we automatically think, oh, you're enabling addiction. And it's like, no, like I'm either I'm always enabling something. What am I enabling? Am I enabling health, or am I enabling old patterns that reinforce addiction? So I'm just trying to change the language that we use, and
Yeah.
kind of have a slow gradual process as opposed to a immediate surprise process. And I want to acknowledge the immediate surprise process has saved people's lives. I know this. And I also know that some people say, no, I'm not going into that treatment center. And it drives a wedge between the individual and their family. And in some cases, the individual feels so bad about themselves, they end up killing themselves. So this is, this is important.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've learned is when we use the pejorative, you're enabling the addicted individual, maybe they're just loving them, and they're doing the best to love that individual. It's actually coming from a place of love rather than enabling, and this is the best they
Right.
can do. They're really loving. I don't,
Yes.
I think the word enabling has sort of just such a pejorative connotation when the actuality, I think, is for the family member, they're actually loving this individual as best as they can,
Yeah.
and maybe
Well,
to show a different way, right? Yeah.
you bring up such an excellent point because part of what family members inspiring them or encouraging them to do is change how they love, to really look at how they have been loving. And, for them to come to the conclusion, I need to change how I have been loving my loved one. That's golden, what you just said.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and maybe loving yourself and just seeing what's right for you also, rather than focusing on the addicted individual.
Yes. Yeah. Other questions here? There's some stuff in the chat. I haven't really been looking at it.
I think it's your
Okay.
it's just your
Okay.
links, mostly your links. And Alien had a comment. Alien, do
Okay.
you
Thank
want
you,
to?
Jeff. This is awesome. I appreciate this information very much. I'm Shelley
Hi, Shelley.
Wallstrom, and I've been listening to you as I'm watching a 2-year-old, so that's why I'm incognito, because um, the information is what I also need, but she's also really busy. So thank you.
Sure. Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you for being here.
Anyone else want? Aileen, do you want to comment, like your experience with the
Right.
families?
Well, I was just gonna throw in, since I've been involved since day one in January of 2023 with Jeff and Mark in the ARIT training, of which this is, what would you call it, Jeff? An offshoot, right?
Yeah. It's me doing it by myself
Yes, exactly.
because
So
Mark
I've been
is
involved
busy.
in the 6 week one, two, as much as I could, and just like seeing it in action is really where it happens, because I've now seen it in action for over a year and 3 months, with like real people, on the screen. And it is really something. It's really, really like as an example, someone who started last year in the ARIT with Jeff and Mark, who initially, with a son in the throes, and initially after, like, a few weeks of the different meetings every week, she was like, I don't know why we're doing this. and then and then I tell you what, like now, it's like they become different people when you find out that it really is you that has to change. And look at how hard it is to change yourself. What makes you think you're going to change anybody else? even if it's your kid or your spouse or whoever.
Right.
So to see the actual changes in the actual people, like for well over a year, it has, I can't say enough good things about it.
Thank you, Elena. Thanks.
Oh, and also the incorporating, because this is like something we do, the nutritional leg of it.
Right.
Because there are some of the family members who have been doing the,
Yeah.
did the chart, doing the amino acids, doing the so
Right.
it really is like Johnny Appleseed in its own
Oh,
way.
and that's a difference from the ERIT training that I did with Mark. But
Yeah.
Salvatore, I
So
see you turn your screen on. Do you have a question?
Well, first
actually,
of all,
oh, go ahead.
go ahead, boss.
No, I was just going to follow up. So I think it was session 5, right? You do or session 4 that you work with Christina's level 2, you said. So who does the actual amino acid part of it? Do you take the families out and then they go to another program to be able to?
So I offered 3 individual sessions, and some people were like, "Oh, I want a session just to where I could get clear on some amino acids for myself to relax my body," kind of thing. So they can use a session that way. They can use the individual sessions however they choose to use them.
Okay, got it. Sorry, Salvatore.
No, you're fine because I was just going to ask about the same question. So, but first of all, Jeff, thank you for presenting at this forum. This is so valuable, and hopefully we can get you back and pick your brain again in the future. But my question went along with Vasa was, who's doing the amino acids? Are you doing the family too? And are you saying that if the family also does the chart and it goes along with it, do you see that that's way more beneficial than just having the individual, or do they work as a team? Like let's do this, because sometimes what I find is that when I ask them to do it in my group, when I see them on a weekly basis, sometimes they put down things that they think I want to see. They'll put zeros or one, and and I can't stress them enough to say, no, you got to say exactly how you feel. So I think if he has like a mother or some other family member along doing with that, that probably adds more value and more truth to it. What
Yeah.
what is your experience with that?
Well, so there's a number of different ways that I could respond. Thank you for bringing that up. And so, one, if like I have a number of individual sessions, and they can do that with me, but in session 1, part of the homework is going to Christina Vasilak's website, aminoacidtherapy.com, and looking at scientific resources, because one of the questions that I bring up is for them to navigate between pharmaceuticals and nutraceuticals. And, so Christina's website has, the name and contact info from many people who have taken her trainings. And I'm like, I don't need to do all this. I don't need to do any of it, quite frankly. And if they have other people that they know or want to work with, I want to encourage them to do that. Like, it isn't about me doing everything, because I can't do everything. I'm trying to focus my time on this program and have multiple, resources for multiple things that come up, because when people start doing this, things will come up. I guarantee you. And then you mentioned the zeros and ones and the underreporting, and it's like, and I've heard this from Christina before in a consultation group with me and everyone else in there is women. And it's like, well, you know, Jeff, men are the ones that underreport. And are you sure this is accurate? Like, because I'm showing something of my own. So that's on one extreme. The other is the people who overreport, who may feel, you know, the label hypochondriac or whatever. So there is, I really want them to be working with someone in the coaching process that can help them navigate this continuum, you know, and for them, for the client, the mom or whomever, to start getting more and more aware of what's happening in their body, you know. So am I answering your question, or is there
Yes.
something that I
Yeah.
left
No,
out?
no, perfect. Thank you. No, that makes a lot of sense. And you're right about the men underreporting, because that's been my experience for some
I'm
reason.
never going to forget that one.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
Sure.
So other questions, or I can probably jump to this and go through it like in 10 minutes or 15 minutes or something.
That would be great. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay. Okay, so screen share. Okay, here we are. Okay, so I have to do this. Okay, so here's the first session, and let me just pop through this quickly. I'm not going to talk a lot about this. Oh, the metaphor that I use here is the river, because I've been on the river a lot, and it's like no family would show up at Lee's Ferry to put into the Grand Canyon 225-mile river trip without being prepared. But with addiction, this happens all the time. And then here are the 6 that I went through. I talk about the past, some quotes from Dr. Bruce Perry. I am really trying to connect brain development here and belonging, because both of those are, as I think everyone here knows, is a significant piece with addiction. And then here are the stories, and I mentioned the Egyptians would flog drunkards, the Turks would pour molten lead down their throat. The Greeks believed that if they put amethyst stone around the rim when the alcohol ran over it, it would minimize or stop any ward off is the language, any kind of drunkenness. So, but that's like rational thinking of the time period. And like the rational thinking piece of it is really important. And here's what I mentioned before, the stigma and shame reduction timeline. I'm not even going to mention this because I could talk about this for too long. But essentially, the right side is we either are orienting around power in our culture, or we are orienting around rules and structure, like that intrusive level. And like recovery is, and specifically AA, is a lot that intrusive level. Like we have rules here, we have structure, follow the rules. You follow the rules, things are going to be okay. And then here is, and I am very open to feedback and kind of tweaking my messaging here, but I am talking about nutraceuticals and pharmaceuticals, and you know, they both have science. And the one on the right, which I'm sure everyone can guess, is pharmaceuticals, has academic research that's funded by pharmaceutical companies, and there's regulations that make it so, you know, that needs to happen. Needs is in quotes. And then here, as I try to frame this as, you know, healing from the disease, and and this being like a normal recovery process that can go round and round, that can go in and out of relapse a number of times. And then I'm trying to frame this one here as biochemical healing, which is more of an upward spiral. So this is an important question. I don't have a lot of time to hit on this, but I see it as I really want to plant seeds for people to start to think about what's going on. And I have people say, well, I'm always going to do what my doctor tells me, and my doctor says pharmaceuticals, and that's what I'm going to do, and da 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 da. And I'm going, okay, fine. And here is kind of like the American Society of Addiction Medicine definition, and it's very kind of narrow. It focuses on one person, and then Gabor Mate's, which I see it expands out any behavior that initially, brings temporary relief or something like that. And how many of us could raise our hand that, we have not gotten into a behavior that initially brings temporary relief and temporary pleasure, but over time it starts becoming problematic. And then here I'm just trying to be clear about what my bias is, which I've already, I think, made clear here. And I talk about these different tools, essentially, the amino acid therapy chart. Mark Stiles, my friend from England, who I did the ERIT training with in January of 2023, created the Birth to Addiction Spectrum. It's a wonderful overview to really show genetic inheritance, which could be abnormalities combined with stress trauma, childhood trauma, the AAS study specifically, and then that leading to symptoms, and there could be numerous kinds of symptoms. And then we have coping mechanisms to deal with those symptoms. And that becomes like the only thing that we ever use, and we get dependent, our body gets dependent on it, turns into an addiction. So I showed the birth to addiction spectrum there. I need to credit Mark Stiles. He's a brilliant guy. And the amino acid therapy chart, I have the one that it's an old one that the Alliance for Addiction Solutions has. Their stamp is on there. And then my website here, the alcoholbioquiz.com, is Joan Matthew Larson's. The what I'm calling the quiz is her alcohol biotype survey. And so it's just inviting people to do that quiz or the alcohol biotype survey. And I say that, you can do it yourself. You can do it for your loved one, because your loved one's patterns. You can probably make a very good guess. And or your loved one may be at a place where they're curious and they'll do it for themselves. So I try to offer a lot of different but what I want to go down to here is the homework piece. So here's kind of, or what I call the field work. And I'm encouraging people to go to Christina's website down here at the bottom in red, and then the alcohol biotype thing. That's just a quick, easy, simple little self-report to start to get a flavor of genetics, abnormal genetics. And I'm not going to talk about that. There's people on here, I'm sure, that know way more about that than I do. I just know Joan Matthew Larson stuff. And then the whole reward deficiency concept. And then the positive and negative reinforcers. This is magical. And if people do nothing else, I want them to do this positive and negative reinforcers, because this they can use in session 5, and they can incorporate that language in when they're talking to their loved one. So that's a quick little example of session 1 and my challenge in trying to kind of go back in the culture, all these mixed messages, and come down to, you know, pharmaceuticals and nutraceuticals kind of question. And any comments or questions, I'm open.
Where's the positive and negative reinforcers? Where is that at a website or is it from Christina's
No,
website?
the positive and negative reinforcers come from the book, The Concerned Other. And that book the author of it is Phil Harris. It's from England. Mark Stiles told me about that. I got the book. It's like $600 if you buy it in this country. Mark got it for
$10.
$50 and sent it to me through the mail. But it comes out of that book. And when Mark and I did the addiction recovery engagement training back in 23, we used that book as a core for the whole program. And
What is the book about? What's the name of the book again?
it is called The Concerned Others, and the subtitle is something like How Family Members Can Get Their Loved Ones to Stop Using Drugs and Alcohol, something like that. And
Yeah,
it's very academic. It has the evidence-based kind of stamp of approval, whatever. There's a lot of assessments on there, and I mean, for the context of this online training, I didn't find it super helpful to be the core of the program. However, there were aspects that were just incredible, and that one, you know, positive and negative reinforcers was one of them. And it's like positive reinforcers are like, when you think about your loved one, what do they like about drinking or drugging or whatever? And, you know, some people are like, I've never thought of that before. And other people are like, oh my, they like this, they like this, they like this. But it's like for them really thinking about what their loved one likes and gets from that is super helpful. And then the negative reinforcers, and there's 2 questions, and I just asked one, and I'm just remembering one. And the negative reinforcers are more about like, what has your loved one, what losses have they incurred from drugs and alcohol? And it's like, you know, well, you know, Uncle Johnny's wedding, they couldn't show up, you know, grandma's funeral, they were drunk, or they were in prison, or whatever the case may be. But it's like for family members to really identify what's the deal, like what are the specifics here, you know? So
Great. No, thank you. Thank you, Jeff. This was really fascinating. This is awesome. Thank you. I learned quite a bit actually.
oh
So
great.
thank you.
Good.
I
Well,
actually have to run and hang out with a 4-year-old. So,
okay.
but not everybody here might not know about your Substack, Jeff. Maybe you could put that in the
Oh,
chat.
yeah. I have a
Okay.
um
Okay.
thank
Bye.
you.
I gotta go.
Thank you,
Okay.
Elena.
Thank you. Yeah,
Uh,
we're going to wrap up. Yeah, we can put the
oh,
Substack also.
so it's Families Navigating Addiction and Recovery. And my Substack is my name, jeffjones.substack.com. And I
Okay,
have
I'm gonna put it in the chat if anyone is interested.
and I have I did an alcohol biotype webinar many years and actually I remember Bruce was there at that webinar. And I wrote a lot of articles about the alcohol biotype thing. And then starting in December, I wrote a bunch of articles, and I probably have another dozen or so articles up. Um, and in the homework, there's a lot of articles that I well, not a lot, maybe 3 that I refer to check this out, kind of thing.
Jeff, can we have access to your webinar? Is it recorded somewhere, or was it just a presentation only?
The alcohol biotype webinar, I don't think I have that. I probably did at some time, but it was, probably 5 years ago, and I don't know where it is now. I should have put it on the back end of my website, but I'm just not that techie person. I didn't have a relationship with a tech person ongoingly. Now I do. I'm so thankful that I do. It's all about the tech. It's all about the tech.
It is, yeah, because I think it is prominent on one of your websites about the seminar. I don't know where I looked. It says you did the webinar.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it's in the Substack.
So the web pages that I have, alcoholbioquiz.com is the most recent, and that web page is targeted on moms and dads with an addicted son, daughter, or non-binary child, kind of thing. And so there's people whose spouse is addicted and all that. But anyhow, that's a super focused website. And then the other one, and I've had this for I don't know how long, thefamilyrecoverysolution.com. And that website needs updating. And I'm sure in the next couple months that will be updated. My first priority with this tech person is get all the tech pieces for this course to where I can, offer this in a bigger way. And actually right now I am starting a waiting list and I'm thinking probably the end of May or June. I will, all of this stuff will be together. I mean, my tech person tells me, oh, it'll just be a couple weeks, but I've learned.
Yeah,
I've learned.
couple of weeks means couple months.
Yeah, right.
But thank you so much, Jeff. This was awesome. And it was great. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing what you're doing,
Yeah,
all
well,
your knowledge.
Thank you very much for the invite, Valsa. I super appreciate it. And I am going to be doing more talks. I'm looking for places to do more talks. And actually, I'm passionate enough about this, and I see that there's just such a huge need that
Yes.
I'm going to do a TEDx talk, and just saying that scares the bejeebers out of me, but I'm going to do it, and so I'm saying it out loud to y'all. So thank you.
No,
Thank
it was
you.
awesome. And this is so needed. I just listened to Dr. Gabor Mate. He had a presentation last week in some other context. So, but this is so needed, like the family aspect of it, and then sort of having a gentler approach for the family, like saying it's okay, your loved one doesn't need or want treatment at this moment, but just come on in and let's just deal with how you're feeling. And so, I think it's great. I think we need to figure out a way to publicize it. So that would be awesome too. So yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you, Jeff.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. All right.
Bye-bye.
See you soon. Hopefully we'll have you back maybe and let us know how things are. Actually, we would love to hear some updates in the near
Okay.
future.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Jeff. Appreciate it.